What is up, guys? You're about to learn the two main rules that you need to know in order to get to the level of 2000 in chess. I'm Grandmaster Igor Smirnov and I'm happy to share exactly how I think while playing chess, and you're welcome to steal this method so that you too become an advanced player. Now, we'll use this position as an example. It is white to move, and you may think about this yourself and decide how you would play here. Black's last move was bishop d2, by the way, offering this trade. And the position is from the game between Firouzja playing white against Giri playing black. Again, please think about this, decide which move you would play here if that was your game, and after that we'll discuss it together. Now, so what is the process of thinking for most players, or at least as far as I can see? Now, white would realize that bishop d2, played by black, aims to take here and puts pressure. Therefore, white thinks, okay, like what is the easiest solution to this? Well, I need to do something about this bishop, and most players would probably take here on d2. After this, Giri would play rook takes d2. Now this pawn on f2 is hanging. On the next move, Giri would happily capture it and would have one more example to his book, My 60 Memorable Draws. And that is a great outcome for black, actually, because at this point, white is up a pawn and he's the one who's trying to play for a win. Now, first of all, let me give you one first bit of advice. Usually, if your opponent offers you something, you don't have to do that. An invitation is not an obligation. And rather than taking here, something like king to f3 should be the move that you rather consider. But that's not even the main point, because here's the shift that I want you to make in your thinking. And here is the difference between strong players and the rest. Strong players focus their attention on their opponent's side of the board and ask themselves, how do I go there and create a threat? So that is the question strong players ask themselves. And first and foremost, they're trying to look at aggressive moves, checks, captures, attacking moves on that side of the board, because those moves would be the most powerful, the most detrimental for your opponent. And that is why you should try to find that kind of move first. And only if there's nothing there, only then you settle for some defensive moves such as king to f3, all right? But first and foremost, again, we check aggressive moves on the side of our opponent. And with that in mind, Firouzja played rook takes f7. Pretty cool sacrifice. It turns out that after king takes, which Giri didn't play, knight takes e5 would fork the king and rook. Therefore, white would win the rook on the next move, and along the way he won two pawns, that pawn on f7 and the pawn on e5. So after something like this, he would appear in a totally winning endgame position. In the actual game, Giri, of course, at this point realized what happens, and he just moved the king away. The situation still remains to be relatively complex. Now, this rook is attacked, the bishop, the pawn on a3, now right here on a3. So what do you do then? Guess what? The same way of thinking. Right? Initially, you focus your attention on opponent's half of the board, ask yourself, how can I take or attack something there? Like, which are the moves that you should consider? I'd say it's either rook to e7 because it's check, you're attacking the king, or rook takes g7 because you're grabbing a pawn. So those are the two moves that you should consider first, and only if these two moves are not good, only then you start looking for any other alternative. You see that this way of thinking is not only stronger objectively, but it is also easier. And Firouzja played rook e7 check, king went here to d6, and can you see the follow-up? It's really beautiful. I guess it was really annoying for black here, because white played rook d7. This was a mad rook which really forced it for black to capture. And this time it's a skewer, therefore black has to capture, but now finally knight takes c5, still a similar fork, and on the next move after king d6 and knight takes d3, white is now 3 pawns up as a result of this, and he won the game very easily just by pushing his 3 passed pawns forward. Alright, so far we talked about the first rule that you need to know, right? It is how you focus your attention on opponent's side of the board and find attacking moves there. But there is also the second rule, and therefore those who did not have enough patience to watch the entire video and only learn the first rule will get to 1000, but will not get to the 2000, which I promised at the beginning. Therefore, you're really on track. Now, it is white to play, and once again you may think about this position and try to find the right move yourself. The game is taken from the game between Spassky and Petrosian. Both of them were world champs, therefore this is really high-level chess. I really love this example because it illustrates both rules and also it's very practical. Like in this position, white can basically play whatever, so as black. Like there are plenty of moves to consider, and many of those moves look decent. Like you can justify them somehow. Again, still, you can think about this yourself, because after this, it will be even more instructive to compare this with, the way of thinking when you know already both of the rules. Anyways, you could, of course, play something like knight c5, attacking the rook, or knight d4, centralizing the knight. You could maybe play queen d8, forcing an exchange of queens and trying to attack pawns after that. You could maybe play king a3 to reposition the king to a more Giri position. You could try to move one of your queenside pawns forward, trying to utilize your pawn majority there. Maybe rook to d8 just to consolidate, have the pieces along the open file. Like all these moves, basically anything. And it makes sense. It follows a certain chess rule, right? So how do you decide which one to play? And it becomes very intricate at first, but very simple when you know the process. So here's the process. Again, the first stage you already know. You look at your opponent's half of the board, asking yourself, how can I go there and create threats, right? So which moves fall under this criteria? It is also interesting to distinguish what are we assuming a threat. For example, knight to c5. Is that a threat or not? Well, it attacks the rook. Therefore, technically, you could say it is a threat. But that's not what I really mean by saying a threat, because I mean to say that you move forward, you create threats, and you force your opponent to defend. Like, that is the main differentiator. Like, your move should force your opponent to defend. That's what you want, because then it means that you activated your position, you improved placement of one of your pieces, and you forced your opponent to do something undesirable, to defend, to go back, to waste time, right? And then you're gaining the upper hand, clearly, because you're improving and your opponent is doing nothing, or maybe even worsening his position. However, in this case, the rook is free to go forward to e3, e2, e1, and it's rather black who's going to be the one attacking after that. Therefore, we certainly do not force black to defend, and for that reason, knight c5 actually does not count as an attacking move. And I would exclude that. Okay, is there anything else? Like queen d8. Well, that creates a checkmate and threat along the 8th rank. However, after queen d8, of course, black would be able to just trade it off. And it's not that he had to spend time or waste something. No, like that was a very simple defense. So I also don't like it too much. What else do we have? b5, the final attacking option. And b6 is actually a checkmating threat. Therefore, yeah, that is definitely a move to consider. However, after b5, again, the problem is black will certainly capture, right? It's pretty obvious. And after that is quite intricate because, white didn't achieve anything specific, and he also opened up his own king as well. Which brings us to the second stage. Of course, ideally, you'd love to play those attacking moves, barge into your opponent's territory and create a lot of devastation there. But what if there are no such options? Or you don't see them? Like, what do you do then? This brings us to the second rule, which is the principle of the least active piece. In this case, you look at your pieces, all the pieces that you have, I'm talking about your pieces, not pawns, and you ask yourself, which one is the least active, doing nothing? In this position, we've got rook, which is already actively involved here. The queen also does a lot, controls this semi-open file, attacks the rook, possibly covers some squares here. If the rook comes away, queen d4 would actually come with a checkmate on the next move. So the queen is relatively active, and the knight on b3 is the only piece which does not do anything at all. Therefore, that is clearly the least active piece. And then you ask yourself, okay, so how can I improve its position? How can I move it somewhere forward, hopefully, or towards the center, where it would be better placed? And with that in mind, Spassky played knight d4, repositioning the knight to the center and also covering this square on e2 so that black can't go there and check your king, because now we've got a knight that controls this square. Therefore, knight d4 just solidifies the position and does it better in many ways, right? Covers this square, maybe the knight is ready to jump to f5 at some point, or, just to take part in our attack in the future somehow. So that is the second stage of thinking. Initially, try to find attacking moves. If not, follow the principle of the least active piece. Petrosian played bishop e3, challenging this knight on d4. And now, do you know what's the next move to play? Guess what? It's the same process, right? And it's, of course, does not apply just to this position, but to any chess position that you play. And especially I'm talking about middle game and end game positions, because in an opening, usually you don't rush into your attack onto opponent's half of the board. In an opening, usually you need to just complete your development first. But for the middle game and end game, that fits perfectly well. Again, the same logic, like how do you move forward and attack? Like I can see only two moves, which is knight f5, hitting the queen, or b5, threatening b6, right? Just two moves. And that is a very common situation again, because your opponent's territory is usually covered by your opponent, coincidentally. And therefore, most of the moves there are just impossible. You just lose material. You usually have just one or two options which are viable and worth considering, which makes it easy for you to consider them and pick the best one. Now, how about knight to f5? Well, definitely an interesting move, attacks the queen. Is this really an attacking move? I'm not too sure about this, because again, like our idea is that we want to force our opponent to go back, to defend, to worsen his position. In this case, however, the queen will probably come forward, which does not necessarily worsen his position. In fact, it made it better. The queen here is more active. It eyes towards your king. In fact, it pins the pawn and enables rook takes b4, check, threat. So knight f5 was not really that effective. Not really an attacking move because it did not force our opponent to defend. And the second attacking move is pawn b5, threatening b6. And that is what Spassky played. And actually, this time it's even more effective because black can't easily stop it by trading. This time we've got this knight, and after knight takes b5, that would easily win the game. Now the king will have to come forward, and now white would probably have a bunch of moves, such as rook to e8, a8 with checkmate on the next move. So that is clearly not an option for black. Therefore, they still need to do something. And in the game, he played bishop takes d4, trying to eliminate this aggressive knight and also covering that square. Now, do you see the next move for white? I'll give you a couple seconds to think about this so that you can enjoy the move after that. And Spassky played the move queen takes d4, sacrificing the queen, and black resigned because the king is in check, but after rook captures, there's a really neat checkmate pawn b6. Alright, now it's your turn to apply this new way of thinking. It is white to play and hopefully win. If you can find it, please write it down in comments below. By the way, it's a really practical position which arises from the Sicilian defense and an opening trap worth knowing. So please think about this, and if you can find the solution, I've got another short video where I just share the solution to this puzzle, which you can check out. I'll drop a link in the description below. Today we talked about one simple frame of thinking, and I hope that it will help you to elevate your chess, but of course there is more to it. And if you feel like you've been stuck in the same level in chess for quite some time, then I'll be happy to help you. I've got a course called Level Up Your Chess, which is designed to give you a very clear blueprint of what do you need to do in order to get to the next level. And it covers everything: openings, middle games, end games, and how to train effectively. You can just follow that proven guide and get better. If you're interested, you can get it by clicking the link below the video in the description, and I'll talk to you in my next videos.